ask some questions to help illuminate exactly what our bill is going to do. Mr. Levine, let me start with you. If we adopt a press shield bill like this, and a reporter were walking down the street and saw a crime, would they owe the sovereign their testimony, or would they be able to get out of it because of the reporter shield bill?
There is a provision in the bill that deals with eyewitness observations of criminal conduct differently than the normal source-reporter relationship.
Okay.
There are still some hoops to jump through, but as a rule, a request for testimony of eyewitness observation of a crime other than a crime that would be committed by giving information to a journalist.
Exactly. But the point is that as long as they're not operating in their professional capacity as a journalist, they would be able to testify about criminal activity they witnessed like everybody else and would be required to.
That's true, too, because the definition of a covered person only applies to people who are engaged in the process of doing their jobs as well.
Okay, Ms. Atkins, let me come to you. A lot of people seem to think that investigative journalism only rarely depends on anonymous sources, and it's only investigative journalism, it's not other types. And I wonder if you could shed some light on this for us. How important are confidential sources to the work of journalists?
Yes, sir. In my case, and I've done both kinds of reporting extensively, even when we are not using in a finished story anonymous sources or confidential sources, they're often the genesis of a story. We may find other people on the record to confirm and be the voices in the face of a story after somebody who is confidential flagged us to the story or maybe flagged us to some original information. So in my experience in both kinds of reportings, it's absolutely critical to be able to speak to people and have them believe that they're not going to be, their identities are not going to be revealed.
Great. Mr. Billman, coming to you. Is there anything illegitimate about people speaking on an off-the-record or deep background basis to reporters? I confess I think I've done that myself, certainly as a state senator. I don't know if I've ever done it in Congress. But is anonymous speech protected under our Constitution?
Anonymous speech is protected, and oftentimes there's a great utility in having a conversation with a source about, because they can give you some background. They can give you, here's what's really happening. You know, you may not, I don't want my name attached to it because if it gets out, then, you know, I'm going to get in trouble with my supervisor. But you learn a lot of detail that you wouldn't otherwise know about what's really happening. It's also very useful for journalists. If they have a story, they're going to go to an agency. This happened with national security stories, to say, here's the story, here's what we have, you know, let us know. We'd like to see if you have any national security concerns about reporting. And they might change a word, they might delay the story for a day, but there are those conversations, and it's important that they be done.
Great. All of us grow up with the wisdom of the Founding Fathers about the importance of the press as a watchdog and the importance of the sunlight that the media brings as a disinfectant to potential corruption in government. But beyond those things that we learn in school, I wonder if any of you or all of you would care to share a contemporary example of a place where you think the press has played a really important role and confidential sources have been critical to the ability of the press to inform the public of something that it needs to know about.
I gave quite a few examples, including the BP oil spill. I don't know if that's contemporary anymore.
Yeah.
But
well, what exactly happened in that one?
Well, when I was asked to cover that story for CBS News, it was several weeks into the story, and there had not been a lot of news unearthed, so they felt that I needed to dig into that. And one of the first things I asked was, where was the video? Because I realized intuitively there was probably a video, an undersea camera. And with the help, actually, of Senator Markey, and actually then Representative Markey, and Senator Nelson, and another senator whose name I can't remember, we worked together with FOIA and pressure to get the government, who had these tapes but didn't want to release them, to release them. But it was only with the help from some inside sources connected to the government that I was able to, with some precision, report that the flow as reported by the government and its experts and by BP was false by a factor that was incredibly, wildly wrong.
They underestimated or understated?
By far. and I couldn't have had the confidence to report that. I did have on-camera sources that do that sort of thing that did confirm it, but I couldn't have reported that story, and that was a major story. Ultimately, I believe that was part of the criminal fraud conviction against BP, was them misleading the public on the size of the spill and the flow.
Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank the gentleman. Gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Meadows.